Minasan, konbanwa. Welcome to tonight's Express PD. I'm Monique Francis from JapanEasyReads. In tonight's webinar, we'll explore how implementing student jobs not only fosters responsibility, but also can boost engagement and language acquisition in the languages classroom. But before we go into the specifics of student jobs, I wanted to unpack the CI classroom a little bit more and specifically the role of the teacher in the class. It is something that I feel very strongly about when I came to understand comprehensible input and acquisition-driven teaching. This was a big mind shift for me. So I just think it's worth revisiting. So in second language acquisition, we know that comprehensible input is the key to acquiring language. Our students need to hear, to listen, and to see, that is to read, a constant flow of language that they understand. And comprehensible input helps then to build the mental representation, and this leads to acquisition. The mental representation are the mental structures that store and organise the knowledge about the language. So as learners are exposed to more and more comprehensible input, their brains create and refine these representations, helping them understand and process the language more effectively over time. So with that in mind, I wanted to talk more about our role as teacher and our role in a CI classroom. So in a CI classroom, it's teacher-driven and student-centred, and I'll break this down and talk a little bit more about this in depth because, as I said, I really feel quite strongly that this is something that is often misunderstood. So CI classrooms, it can often feel very teacher-centred because the teacher is speaking the most. It can often be criticised that it is the opposite of student-centred because of that, because the teacher is using a lot of language. So why is that so? Why is the teacher using so much language that they are providing so much language? So the teacher's role is to provide that rich, compelling and comprehensible input in ways that the students can understand and help them acquire the languages naturally. So this is achieved through the pacing that the teacher might do. It's achieved through repeating in different ways the language. It is saying the same thing differently. It is noticing when the student's eyes might indicate that they haven't quite grasped something, even though they haven't said that. So it requires the skill of the teacher to provide that in a way that is going to be accessible to all of the students. So the reality really is that CI classrooms are inherently student-centred, and student jobs, which we'll go into tonight, provide another way for students to engage with the language in a really dynamic way. So students aren't passive recipients in a CI classroom, quite the opposite. They're very active in the communication process. They are listening intently, listening to get meaning. They're interacting with the teacher and with their peers, and they respond in ways that make the classroom a collaborative environment. So by taking on student roles and their responsibilities, they not only contribute to the flow of the classroom, but also it allows them to engage more deeply with the language. So the balance of teacher-driven input and student-centered participation creates a classroom where acquisition flourishes. Teachers guide the input while the students shape the learning experiences through their involvement. And together, they make language acquisition both effective and enjoyable. So I hope that is clear. That's as I said, I'm sharing this because this was something that really inspired me to reflect on my own teaching and my role as the provider of the input. So it was shifting away from memorized chunks of language. It was moving away from memorizing lists, moving away from role play that was already determined. And instead, the shift was providing input that the students found interesting enough for it to hold their attention and for them to engage and really listen for meaning, because once that meaning was grasped, I knew then that the acquisition was happening. And for us to build up that mental representation, that's what we need to provide. That needs to be our number one role in the classroom, is to provide that input. So I'll move on. And why introduce student jobs? So I have touched on it already, but classroom jobs shifts the ownership to the student. And so that helps to create an inclusive and collaborative environment. So the 4 big pluses for introducing student jobs: number one's engagement. So the students feel valued and connected to the classroom. And as a result, they are more inclined to take risks and to interact more actively. Number 2, responsibility. So it really does, the student jobs really promote ownership of routines and tasks, spreading the workload, I suppose. And yeah, following on from that, so with the focus on acquisition, with the students picking up these jobs, the teacher has a little bit more brain space. It frees them up to concentrate on developing the comprehensible, compelling input. So the jobs that the student can do, anything that the students can do and are able to do, it takes the pressure off the teacher. And once those routines are set up, it does free mind space for the teacher to really focus on providing that comprehensible input. And excuse me, probably my most the most important one for me is the inclusivity. So student jobs really support students in a variety of different ways. For students that need to have a challenge, it's very easy to allocate students a task that they will really rise to the occasion. But on the other end of the spectrum, there are some student jobs, which I'll go into tonight, which really helped me when I have had fidgety, bouncy students that need something to really ground them a little bit. So ground and stay focused. So we'll have a look at some of these. There are numerous different types of student jobs that you can implement into your classroom, but here are a handful and of the ones that I have used over the years. And you'll find that some of these will work really well for you. You might find that you don't need some of these jobs. So I would suggest that maybe trial them. That's certainly what I did. I trialed a few and tweaked a few. So we'll just go through some of these. So the common ones that you can implement into your classes the paper officer, so printo gakkari. And so this person with my younger kids, I actually just used kami no hito, but I do think that if you can use the gakkari throughout a few of these, it's probably a good thing. And so this person is, hands out and collects the papers. That's their job. Board or gakkari is the cleaner of the board. So the board manager cleans the board, makes sure that it's clean at the beginning and at the end of the lesson. Tenki gakkari can provide, there's a few different ways of doing this, but they can provide daily updates in the target language, depending on the level. Anytime that you're talking about calendar talk or the weather, they can be your sidekick there. This one here was a huge success. Hakushu gakkari, the applause leader. So other titles could be Owen gakkari, or what was the other one? Mori age gakkari, so the hype leader. And this one was really great, particularly when I started including a little bit more chit chat or conversation starters. And once we were using a little bit more general conversation, a little bit of kaiwa, or when we were doing creating stories together. So if someone did something great, the hakushu gakkari would call out hakushu, and everybody would give it a clap, and immediately the atmosphere rose in the class. So I might even help model that in the beginning by saying, "Oh, sugoi desu ne," and then give a look. Hakushu, minasan hakushu. So that was a really, that was a great one that can sometimes be particularly well suited to different students that might need that extra little bit of grounding to follow the class and to keep listening with the intent to understand. So they've got to follow along so they know when and where to applause. The other word there that I have used with the hakushu gakkari was some of those rejoinders. So omoshiroi, and so then the rest of the class could echo it back. Hi, omoshiroi desu. So that was a really good one. I definitely encourage you to try that one. The jikan gakari was also well sought after, and I used this classroom job for timing. If we were, for example, having a challenge to stay in Japanese, I might ask the timekeeper and we'll say, 2分 onegaishimasu. And so they would have the uh, the timer there, and they would say dozo, or starto, and then jikan desu at the end. So it was a really effective way of allowing very in context use of certain high frequency words. This one is one that I haven't actually used, but I love the idea of this absent buddy. Kesekisha gakkari and supporto. And so this person is in charge, and again, it would depend on your structure of your schools and your classes, but the absent buddy could gather any notes or for the absent student and make sure that they have what they need for the next Japanese lesson, or they're in charge of checking in saying, oh, Samsung wa imasen. So, okay, so here's Sam's, they can put it in his locker or they can put it on his desk or what have you. But I think that that's a really nice, inclusive student job to do. Eigo keisatsu, the English police. And this is a fun one to do because I would explain to the classes when I moved to more CI, I actually spent some time explaining why we're changing and the things that I had learned. They were really, really open to finding out more about how language is acquired and why we do the certain different activities, how things have changed and why. So one of them, I'd said, I have a 50% in this and you have 50%. So my 50% is that I make sure that everybody understands. And sometimes I can speak really, really fast. Sometimes I can go out of bounds. Out of bounds means that I'm using language too much language. So we try and stick with the Super 7 and the highest frequency words. And if I'm adding too much language, that's when I need to get pulled up by the eigo keisatsu. So that's their job. And similarly, the speedo keisatsu is the speed police. So if I'm talking, oh, sorry, I got those two mixed up. So the speed police, when I'm speaking too fast and need to slow down. So the speed police would be looking around and seeing, okay, is there someone who's looking a bit lost, or maybe there's a hand signal which could indicate that, need to slow down. So that's the speed police. The eigo keisatsu is when we try to say in Japanese, and if I slip out and I'm using some English instead, well then the eigo keisatsu can pull me up. So it's really there to show that, this is, we're in this together, and I suppose it shows a little bit of vulnerability, which I think is actually a really important thing for us as teachers to show. So, yep, okay, I'm slipping out of there. I need to get back into Japanese. So it just sort of levels the playing field, I feel, a little bit to show, yeah, we're in it together. So that's a little bit of an overview, but there's more. You might have different jobs that need doing. There's also another one which I didn't pop on there. I don't think it fit. And that was the Chisai sensei, and that person would do the role for me and start the class. So, Minasan, Kiritsu, Rei, Chakuseki, and they enjoyed doing that too. So that was the Chisai sensei. And the other thing I wanted to mention with this is that the classroom jobs really do allow easy implementation for those really important phrases such as onegai shimasu, arigato, dozo, sumimasen. So you can incorporate those key phrases into your the job description. But I wanted to go through a couple in a little bit more detail, and these ones, I think some of those jobs might be similar in other subject areas, but the counter gakari is one that is specifically really useful for CI. So the counter gakari counts it can be used in a few different ways actually. So these are little clickers where you click and it records the number. So there are a few different ways that I've used this. One, if I was really trying to increase engagement through questioning, I might ask the counter gakari to click how many questions I have asked over the course of a certain period of time or the lesson. They say, 25 to 40 less questions per class lesson is a good amount. So it makes it into a little bit of a game too for the students, and again encourages that not me and you, but us mentality. We're all trying hard to use and stay in the language and use the language. And, this is the way that we can do this together and keeps everybody a little bit accountable. And the other way that I have used it is to count target vocab. So when I was really trying to focus on really providing lots of input for imas and arimas, I had two counters, and so then that was interesting to compare at the end and say, which one was oi and which one's skunai, and mada gambarimasu, I'll try a little bit harder with which one was missing out. So that's another really good job for those bouncy kids. It keeps them really focused on the input and following along in the class. Now, some of you might be familiar with passwords. So passwords are expressions in the target language that the students are required to say in order to enter the classroom or leave the classroom even. You could have that as an exit ticket too. So there are, again, a few different ways that you can use password or gakari. So they could say, password wa nan desu ka? So if there is an established password for that week, and maybe it's yoroshiku onegai shimasu, they could ask what the password is, and the students need to know. So that's when they're coming in the classroom. It could be things like onamae wa nan desu ka? And they have to reply. It could be suki na tabemono wa nan desu ka? Really, it's a bottomless pit. There's lots of different things, and I think it's great to target those ones that might be tricky to get lots of reps in during a regular class, regular lesson. So the other thing is that passwords, rejoinders, and call and response often overlap and can be interchange a bit. So using call and responses and rejoinders as passwords gives the students more repetitions and therefore more confidence with those expressions, which will help the students use them more. And that's certainly what I noticed, and I put down to why the students were starting to use more impromptu language. Another way to use this, the gakkari might say, again, depending on the level, you can make it include more language, but you might say, the gakkari might say, Are, mo mokuyobi desu ka? And then the password could be, Hayai desu ne. So that's another great example of a very natural exchange. Some of the call and responses that could also be used is achu, daijoubu, or ichi ni san, taki, shh, or 10, 9, 8, and then the password 7, 6, 5. So by using the expressions as passwords, students get all those repeated phrases in authentic contexts every day, every lesson, which builds automaticity and confidence. Plus, because they're tied to predictable routines, students begin to internalize the expressions without even really realizing it. So definitely a good one there. So just a little bit of a recap. The benefits of student jobs in the classroom, there's so many, but I guess it boils down to 4 main points. So it builds class culture and cooperation and shared responsibility, and also helps to improve classroom management. It empowers learners and boosts their confidence in using Japanese meaningfully. The students then take ownership of their tasks. It reinforces acquisition goals by repeated exposure to high-frequency words and authentic contexts. And it reduces teacher distraction and overload. It delegates some of those administrative tasks to students that they can handle. And why it works, because it engages students with real life language. It where am I? Encourages daily interaction with the key vocab, provides consistent and contextualized input, and it can also foster cultural connections. You can include, for example, the bowing as part of the password for the password gakkari. You could even have a bunka gakkari who might research a little um, snippet of Japanese and come and share that in your class. So just a couple of little tips. Start small. I did make the mistake of getting so excited about this and wanting everyone to have a job straight away, and I don't recommend that. So start small, introduce 2 or 3 jobs, and build up from there. And model the expectations. They need to be taught and use simple, comprehensible language to explain the role. And this sort of flows on to celebrate contributions. Acknowledge the effort to build motivation. So I saw Senor Chase, who's another CI teacher. She's a wonderful Spanish CI teacher, and I love her idea of a letter of appointment for each of these roles. And so it congratulates them, it celebrates them on their successful position, and then it also explains the task. That part is in English, so that it's really clear what they need to do, and it also really does acknowledge their effort and celebrates their contribution. And really importantly, tweak the jobs as needed. You might not need all of them all year, and there might be some other jobs that you do need. So the heater gakkari or the door gakkari. So work with what works in your context is probably the best tip. And I just wanted to share this. Bryce Hedstrom is a great CI trainer, and I'm just sharing his quote here. Students with jobs become more aware of what's happening in the classroom. I think that's so important. They're not just walking through the motions, but they are really owning it and their space. They have, a great, it opens their eyes to what's happening in the classroom and the people around them and the things that need to be done, and that they share the load, allowing the teacher to focus on what they do best, which is the teaching. So I really would encourage you to try and give student jobs a go in your class. Start with just 1 or 2 and increase, and you really will be amazed at the positive impact that this has on the students and their interactions in the class, and also what they're able to acquire really very naturally through these meaningful interactions. So thanks very much for joining me tonight. Just open to any questions. I can see someone's joined me, but I'm not sure who. So if you did have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. But if not, if you'd like to dive deeper into any of these topics, I'd love to continue the conversation in the JapanEasyReads community. So,
May I ask a question?
oh, you may. Who's that there?
Tessa.
Oh, Tessa. Oh,
Yeah.
lovely to see you. Well, I'm not
Sorry,
seeing.
I joined a bit late tonight.
Yeah, you've got a question?
Yeah, so I had a go at this and I did the same thing that you did. I got a little overexcited and I came up with all these jobs and
Yeah.
made kids sign up to them, and then yeah, they weren't invested in it at all.
Yeah.
Did you kind of pick your students that you wanted to do, or
Yeah,
like how did you kind of
yeah. I I I had in my mind the ones that I thought would, and first time I did it, as I said, I went all out, which was really, really bad. The next, the next time I tried it, um, I, I had a couple of kids in mind for different things. So, for example, the Chisai Sensei, I chose someone who I knew was, I think I might have just so that the students could see how it was in action. So one of those more outgoing sort of kids. And honestly, I only needed to do that a little bit. Then I had people volunteering and saying, she's already done it, can I do it? So I think that that was a really good lesson for me to be selective with who I chose at the beginning. So I think otherwise it can be quite a daunting. They don't know what they're getting themselves in for. So um, that is probably one thing that I did learn. So once I had, a fairly capable student do it and we ran through it, we did it for a few weeks and then, yeah, I was asking for, um, uh, you know,
different
uh,
jobs?
different jobs and sign up for the ones that you want. And, I also, I suppose I did a bit of combo. I also did tap a few kids on the shoulder. Like I had uh I had one ADHD kid and we were talking about different ways to that I could support him in the class. And, so we'd had these one-on-one chit chats, and I raised that with him and said, you know what, I think that this could be a good thing for you. This is what you need to do. Are you up for it? And he was great, and he loved the hakushu gakari, and so he did that for a couple of weeks, and
You
then it
kept
sort
it
of became
pretty short, how long they did it for?
sorry.
You sort of kept it short for how long they did it for, or was it kind of their job the whole year, or
Oh, not for the whole year. No, I did
yeah,
rotate it. So, um, I'm just trying to think are you primary or secondary?
secondary?
Secondary. Sorry, I keep forgetting secondary. Um,
Mhm.
so because I had, for the secondaries, I did it, most of the job stayed for a week.
Oh,
But for my primaries, I had to rotate that, I had, um, and that was a bit more time consuming, but I'd spend 5 minutes, we just go through um, and choose, okay, who wants to be this. I only had for the primary, maybe I had four to start with, four different jobs. And so they did have a little bit of autonomy about which ones that they wanted to, but I tried to rotate it around so that the same kids weren't, you know, yeah, dominating. Um, but yeah, for secondary, I think at least we've got a 2 week turnaround. So yeah, it might have actually been
yeah.
for the 2 weeks. Yeah.
Hmm.
But again, I think I don't know whether there's a right or wrong way for that. It would be except I would try and think about who you could ask um, for and really, really talk it up that, this is this is a good thing. Like some kids don't want to do it, but I found the majority, once they knew what was expected of them, they were more than happy to yeah, put their hands up. And then the ones that towards the end of the year or the semester, I just kept a note of who was doing what. And it was also really good to have on their reports too that they volunteered or they stepped up to do this role. Um, and
Yeah.
yeah, and then the ones that hadn't, I was just having a little, I'd call them little check-ins, so we'd have a check-in and I'd say, oh, you haven't yet. What would be one that you'd like to do? I'd like everyone to take, you know, to to contribute. So I think that was helpful too, having those um, little
Yeah.
check-ins just to say, okay,
Mhm.
yeah.
So you had to kind of monitor in that case. You had to be keeping track of who had done what sort of.
Yeah, it was probably just, yeah, it just gave me a little bit more control over what was happening. I felt that, um, you don't need to do that. Like if it's more, if you're happy just sort of, like I don't think you necessarily need to, but that was just my, I like to know, just keep a check on who was doing what, and more for the fact of who might be slipping through that, I um might miss. Yeah. So
Yeah. Can
yeah.
I? Yeah. No, I think that's very helpful because yeah, as I said, I did what you did. I got super excited and just
Yeah.
kind of
Oh,
failed spectacularly at it.
yeah, ditto. I can totally relate to it. It was just, it nearly put me off for good. And then I just had a good hard think about it. And I thought, what were you thinking? Like it was just, you were asking for trouble there. There was so much going on. And yeah. So, and like maybe some of those aren't going to work for you, or you don't need them right now, but I'd try and like the hakushu gakkari, um with the right person, that really did, that was one of the favorite ones. And also the clicker things, they're not that expensive. I think Temu, you can get them, for $5 or something. And, for those, it's almost acts like a fidget toy for some
Yeah,
kids.
I can think
Uh,
of a few kids that would be right for those as
mm,
well.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I'm
And
pretty terrible at using enough language. I wouldn't get anywhere near the language. I think, what did you say, 40? Was it 40?
40, like between 25 and 40 questions if you can. Yeah.
Not yet.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's totally okay. That was something suggested to me. So I'm not saying that I hit those marks every lesson either. But it's good to have in the back of your mind, I suppose, that, the more questions you're asking, the more interaction that they're getting. And I don't know whether you're here for the first bit. I was talking about how sometimes CI teaching can get a little bit of pushback with, uh, if with some people thinking that it's very teacher centered, but because of the number of questions that we use and we engage in that way. um, we're providing the input, but with the questioning that we do and the connecting in with their interests, it's epitomizes the student-centered approach, I think. So yeah, I think that that's that's something to have as a, work towards. But yeah, you do what you can do at that, at certain times. So yeah. But for me, the questioning, once I was able to question more easily, and recycle the questions more easily, I think that was probably the biggest skill that helped with me on the ground, just being able to ask more questions. And that was definitely something that didn't, I had to really work at and, flop at. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm working on that one.
Yeah, yeah.
Definitely.
But we're all working. We're all doing the same thing, just trying to improve. So
You might have said this, but did you do like an introduction for each job? Did you like have a slide or something and be like, like almost an advertisement, like a brochure kind of
yeah, I
thing?
did. Yes, I did. So, just explaining what it was, and then I haven't done this, but I think it's great to do. The Senior Chase, she has a little, like a letter of acceptance of the position, and it just sort of says, congratulations, you're successfully, you'll be our Hakushu Gakari, and this is in English though, and
Mm.
your job will be, and so and you can hand that out to the students. They can put it in their folder so that they know what their, um,
That's cute, yeah.
yeah, what the
She's so
job
good,
entails.
Senora Chase. She's so good.
Oh, she's fabulous. I
La
love.
maestra loca.
Oh yes, yeah. Actually,
Yeah.
I re-listened to the one on Joy that she did with Liam Printer just today. I loved it. It was yeah, a great one about some brain breaks. So I was going to share one of her great brain breaks because another member of the community had asked for more brain breaks, and I thought, oh, I'll check out Senor um, Maestro.
La maestra loca, she's
That's
called.
it. Your Spanish is better than mine. And anyway, she had, not surprisingly, she's the queen of brain breaks, and she had a couple of really good ones we can easily tweak for Japanese. So I'm going to try and do a little video on that one. I think that might be easier, and I'll post it in the group. Mm, yeah, and share that. It was really fun.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
sounds good.
yeah.
All right. I
Oh,
won't keep you any longer. Sorry.
oh, no, thanks. I love all these questions. And if you think of anything else, or if there's anything that you'd like upcoming webinars to be on, yeah, please, yeah, let me know. I'm open to just about anything.
Yeah, well, I'm still working my way through your other ones.
Okay, yep, yep, yeah,
Yeah.
no worries.
Um,
That's good. No problem. Well, if something burning pops up, let me know. I think next week I'm going to just do another. I would like to do it. I'm a bit late for the Valentine's Day, but I've got a really cute movie talk that I thought that I would share. So I might do that one next week. I'll post it in the group and see what people think. But yeah, thanks for popping in tonight,
sounds good.
Tessa. Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks for your questions. It helps me clarify things when I have to explain it. So thanks.
Um, yeah, it's so good to have the Japanese because everything else is Spanish, French, and I'm
Yep.
like, it's not the same. It's
No,
not
it's
character
definitely
language.
not. No, it's not. So, it's definitely something that, yeah, I would love to see more Japanese teachers embracing a little bit more so that we're not in the minority in CI. So, yeah, spread the word.
Yeah,
CI is the way to
I
go.
was gonna do a little presentation, just really short at my next network meeting. I was thinking,
Oh, yeah, fantastic.
yeah,
Yeah.
I would love to do some PL in person on this. Like the online stuff is great, but
Yeah,
yeah,
yes. Yeah, no, definitely.
face to face is yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my training at the beginning was face to face, and then, that was really good foundation. But then, the online was great, but I was really grateful that I had the initial face to face at several of the conferences here in Australia. So yeah, I totally get what you mean. It's so much better face to face. So I'm sure you'll do great at the presentation. When is it?
Not for a few weeks, so I'm gonna figure
Yeah.
out what I want to say the most. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, if I can
I
help
think.
anyway, or with
Well,
anything,
I'll
yeah.
definitely be mentioning you.
Thanks, Tessa. Yeah,
My
I'm
kids
sure you'll do.
loved Boris. So
Oh, super. Oh,
yeah, when
great.
we did Boris last year, so they still come up. I don't have many of my year 8 classes. I did it year 7 last year, and they still,
Yeah.
if I'm around and they see a magpie, they're like, Boris, Mrs. Boris.
Oh, that's super cute. That is, yeah, love that. Oh, oh, well, thanks for sharing that.
No, my pleasure. Thank you.
No worries, Tessa. Well, all the best this week, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Good night.
Okay, thanks. See ya.